आपका आज वीडियो में
स्वागत
और
है।
आज वीडियो हम लेकर आए, इसका टाइटल है
फ्रॉम जिन्ना टू इमरान खान, रियल हिस्ट्री ऑफ पाकिस्तान एक्सप्लेन्ड।
तो चलिए देख लेते हैं कि वीडियो लेकिन से पहले
इस वीडियो का चैनल का ओरिजिनल लिंक आपको हमारी वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन मिल जाएगा। सब्सक्राइब करिए, लाइक करिए, शेयर को फॉलो करें इनके चैनल को। उसके अलग मैं लोग का लिंक भी हमारी वीडियो के डिस्क्रिप्शन मिल जाएगा। सब्सक्राइब करिए, लाइक करिए, शेयर को फॉलो करें।
चलिए देख लेते हैं ये वीडियो।
We've done a ton of episodes when it comes to Indian history, some episodes on world history as well. This one is a special on the history of Pakistan. I'm fully aware that we have a huge Pakistani audience that watches this show as well. I'm aware that we have an international audience from other countries as well. I've tried bringing out a very objective side of Pakistani history through one of the world's experts on this subject. He's written multiple books on this subject. He's one of the most respected geopolitical commentators in the modern day. His name is Tilak Devasher. He's going to be back on the show repeatedly because that's the quality of the conversations that we've had with him. This is a 2-part special. Lots more episodes with this legend are on their way. But for now, let's learn about the history of Pakistan starting from pre-independence India. Here we go. This is a knowledge-packed history special of TRS. I've wanted to do this podcast for a while and I was waiting for the right kind of guest. Tilak Devasher, sir, welcome to TRS.
Thank you so much for having me here. I've heard so much about you. I've watched your shows. Pleasure to be here.
No, it's our honor. India and Pakistan have been celebrating intellectualism, have been celebrating history, have been celebrating the subject of geopolitics a lot over the last 2 years. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have even made videos like this. I wouldn't have gone so in-depth into geopolitics, but the audiences have changed now and everyone wants to know from the subject experts. I guarantee you, you're going to get more views than a Bollywood diva interview. So, welcome to TRS, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I think we should begin this episode by doing a bit of Pakistan History 101, starting, I would like to believe, in 1947, but you know, there is some pre-1947 Pakistan history. So I'll actually let you lead the way because you've written multiple books on the subject. You've written multiple reports on present day Pakistan. That's what we'll cover in the next episode. But sir, where do we begin the story of Pakistan? Keeping in mind that there's also Pakistani viewers watching this. What up, y'all? But we're back.
Okay. So, let me begin about my interest in Pakistan.
Sure.
You know, people ask me, how come, why are you so interested in Pakistan? And I started getting interested in Pakistan because of the stories that my father, who was an Indian Air Force officer, used to tell us about 2 Pakistan Air Force officers who were his flight commanders during the Second World War, flying Spitfires and Hurricanes over Burma. And these 2 officers went on to head the Pakistan Air Force, Air Marshal Asghar Khan and Air Marshal Noor Khan.
Wow.
And so I, that the name struck then. Then the wars of 65 and 1971 heightened my curiosity. In college and university, I studied the partition of India and the freedom struggle. And I was pretty much into Pakistan. And just so happened during my professional life, I had an opportunity to study Pakistan in great detail. And after I retired, I've read even more on Pakistan than I did while I was in service. And what struck me, Ranveer, was that most of the information or the attention in India gets focused on Indo-Pak relations, the stop-go Indo-Pak relations, the terrorism, the LOC, cross-border violations, the nuclear issue. But the real and serious problems of Pakistan tend to get lost in India. So I have studied Pakistan beyond the beaten track and gone into issues like, why is Pakistan such a troubled and troublesome state? Are its problems of recent origin, or they go into the movement that led to the creation of Pakistan?
Do you think that the average everyday Pakistani looks at their country in the same manner that you're speaking about?
No. In fact, that is why my books have got a lot of appreciation in Pakistan, because they realize for the first time where they are coming from. My first book, Pakistan Quoting the Abyss, a Pakistani intellectual wrote in a newspaper that this is easily the best book on Pakistan. Because not for the first time, at least there was an Indian author who had a very objective view and was telling them what they should have known, but they didn't.
You do know that this is the audio version of that, right? And this is going to reach out to like a whole new audience. So
More the merrier.
okay.
Because, this is something which they don't realize themselves. So I've studied, so all my books are focused basically to bring about a new perspective and a deeper understanding of what's going wrong with Pakistan. So that was my, the beginning of how I got interested in Pakistan.
Okay.
And you're right, that Pakistan, for me, the real problems in Pakistan start even before its creation, in the Pakistan movement. The movement that led to the creation of Pakistan. Today's Pakistan's fault lines, genetic fault lines, ethnic fault lines, political fault lines, security fault lines, all start from even before the creation of Pakistan.
We're taught a version of history in our history books, and I've had lots of historians as well as geopolitical observers on the show who say that we've probably been taught a morphed version of history, which celebrates certain individuals, which kind of rejects other individuals. Now, I'll give you what I remember about Pakistani history from my schooling in India. I'd also love to know what someone my age would have studied in Pakistan about their own history and about India. We know that Jinnah was a freedom fighter. What we're taught in school is that he was kind of very in sync with working with the leaders of the Indian freedom struggle that we hear about in India. That's Gandhiji, Jawaharlal Nehru, etc. And eventually, somewhere in the 1930s or 40s, there was this whole rise of his political party. I can't remember the name.
The All India Muslim League.
Yeah, the Muslim League. And that was where this idea of Pakistan began. And eventually in 1947, because of the differences between the Indian faction and his faction, it led to the creation of Pakistan. Now, there have also been some conspiracy theories that have been brought up on the show, which say that both Gandhiji, as well as Jawaharlal Nehru, as well as Jinnah, were all sort of agents of the British. And would you like to say anything about this?
If you don't mind,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
a very simplistic and distorted view of what actually happened.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Please correct me. I'm here to learn.
Like the whole movement for Pakistan started by a section of the Muslim elite in North India because they had lost power and patronage due to the long decline of the Mughal Empire and the growing influence of the British. Right? So long as this Muslim elite in the north had power and patronage, they did not think they were a minority. They started feeling a minority when they no longer enjoyed that power and patronage because Mughals had declined on one side, the Marathas had risen, and the British were moving from the east. And when this talk started of representative government, one man, one vote, then they suddenly realized that we are in a minority. We will be overwhelmed by the Hindu majority if every man has a vote. That is when this feeling of being minority, persecution, and we want special protection started. The first person who articulated this was Sayyid Ahmad Khan in the 1890s. And he said, it's like, I have 4 dice. I mean, the Hindus have 4 dice and I have only 1. Obviously, the man with the 4 dice is going to win. The same thing was done by Jinnah in the 1940s. When Gandhiji said, we are brothers, he said, but you have 3 dice and I have only 1.
Quantitatively speaking, is that accurate? No?
Yes, this is actually what happened.
Okay.
See, nobody knew how representative government will actually work. They presumed that all Hindus will vote for a Hindu and all Muslims will vote for a Muslim. What happens then? Because they're in a minority, the Hindus would always win. So that was one, let's say one bucket. The feeling of alienation of being a minority among the Muslims.
Okay.
The second bucket is the British. Now there, initially when the movement for self-government, etc. was increasing, restiveness amongst the Hindus after 1957, they started the Congress. So A.O. Hume set up the Congress that it will be a debating society where the Hindus can let off steam. But just so happens that Muslims too started gravitating towards the Congress. Then the British realized, this is a problem. Because they had identified after 1857 that were the Hindus and Muslims to come together, it is the end of the British Raj. Therefore, the differences between the Hindus and Muslims, the social differences, the cultural differences, must be escalated to the political and constitutional level. That will keep them apart.
This is roughly when?
After 1857.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Wow.
Right. So this led finally to three events in the early 1900s. First was the partition of Bengal, because Bengal was where the real, movements had started. So when you partition into East and West Bengal, the Muslim portion went. That you created one barrier between the Hindus and Muslims. Then in 1906, they set up the All India Muslim League, which was done at the behest of the British. They funded it also. It was set up in Dhaka. And the third was separate electorates. So Muslims will vote for Muslims, Hindus will vote for Muslims. These three developments made sure that the problem or the differences between Hindus and Muslims are escalated to the political and constitutional level. And they haven't looked back since then. The Jinnah's issue was that he realized that in the Congress party, so long as Gandhiji, so long as Pandit Nehru, so long as other leaders were there, he didn't have a chance at leadership. So 1930s onwards, with the egging of the British, he started moving away from the Congress. In fact, at one time, he was considered the best brand ambassador for Hindu-Muslim unity. This was the title given to him. But then he started moving away when he realized this. And after, for example, in the 1937 elections, the Muslim League won no seats. And the Congress had formed governments in various... But, that is a different story. But this is how the differences of Hindus and Muslims were raised or escalated to the constitutional and political level by these two developments.
Okay. Before I let you proceed on this actual timeline, I have another cinematic question for you, which is that if the British didn't actually further this Hindu-Muslim divide, and if we were entirely one country today, like if Akhand Bharat was an actual thing, do you think that would have led to a better present and or future for all of us collectively? Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka.
You see, that's a very theoretical question. You can go either way. You can go either way.
I'm sure you've toyed with this idea at some point.
Yeah, being a historian, my background is history. I look at what is or what was.
Okay.
To speculate, it's very difficult. There are so many imponderables.
Okay. Cool.
So one has to look at the way the history developed. Once these three developments took place, 1905, 1906, 1909, separate electorates, the die was cast.
It was going to happen.
It was going to happen.
All right.
Because the once you tell the Muslim that you're going to vote only for the Muslim, and the Hindus only go to the Islam, so the divide to aayi gayi na. Then you have the Muslim League, and what the British did was, and what Jinnah did was, the real fight for India's independence was between the Congress and the British. The Muslim League was the beneficiary. They got Pakistan on a platter. Till 1947, till the creation of Pakistan, no Muslim League person ever went to jail for demanding Pakistan. Gandhiji, Pandit Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Maulana Azad spent years, decades in prison for demanding India, for demanding freedom. No one from Muslim League. The only time, in fact, Jinnah went to jail or spent one night in prison was during the annual Cambridge-Oxford boat race in London for unruly behaviour. This was way back in the 1890s. That's the only time he spent a night in the clink. Okay. No Muslim League leader went to... whatever sacrifices they talk about happened once the partition plan was announced, the Ratcliffe line, and even before that, when the killings started, Hindu-Muslim killings in Punjab. That's when they suffered. But for demanding Pakistan, nobody in the Muslim League went to. That had a different adverse consequence, which I'll tell you later on.
Another source of historical perspective that at least my generation has is movies. There was a movie called Hey Ram, which was about Nathuram Godse, I believe. I can't remember it. All I remember about that movie is how they showcase Hindu-Muslim riots in Bengal. And this was happening slightly before independence happened. So probably, I'd assume, between 1945 and 1947. Am I right in saying
that? 1946. You see, this is when Jinnah gave a call for Direct Action Day. And he made this famous statement that we also now have a pistol. He wanted to demonstrate to the British that Hindus and Muslims could not stay together. The Cabinet Mission Plan had proposed a confederation. And he wanted to make sure that the British accede to the Muslim League's demand for creation of Pakistan.
I have to pause you there a little bit and I have to go one layer deep and ask you, as an observer of Jinnah, what was his actual intention behind this? Did he genuinely believe that the Muslims need a separate country? Or, as the conspiracy theorists say, is it actually just a chase for being remembered according to the history books?
No, he actually, by 1940, you see, when he came back after the 37 elections, he went back for his practice in the UK, then he came back. And he immediately changed his dress, for example. He started wearing the Karkul cap, he started wearing an achkan, and basically an Islamized kind of his persona changed. And in 1940, at the annual convocation of the All India Muslim League in Lahore, when he articulated this thing, that Hindus and Muslims are two separate nations, and the Muslims are by no means a minority, and therefore they must have their own homeland. And he didn't talk about Pakistan then, but that this is called the Lahore Resolution. And then you had somebody in Cambridge, who gave the acronym of Pakistan. And so for Jinnah, it was not something, what you had mentioned. He actually started believing in it, came to it late, but actually started believing in it.
Okay, fair. Okay, because all sorts of people have all sorts of theories on this.
Yeah.
Like, we've had this whole conspiracy theory vibe on the show. I think the audiences are at a point where they want the details of history from someone like yourself. So I'll let you proceed with the story.
So before this, where was I when you...
1946, I believe.
Yeah. So Direct Action Day, when Jinnah wanted to convince the British that Hindus and Muslims cannot be together. So then there were these riots in Calcutta, where about 4,000 people died. Bulk of them were Hindus. And then Gandhiji went on a fast on to death. And then peace was established. So he wanted to establish this. That's what happened. Interestingly, in his a book written by the son of Iskandar Mirza, he mentions that Jinnah had contact. That time he was the Deputy Commissioner of Peshawar, Iskandar Mirza. And he told him that in case the British do not concede Pakistan, then we will have to demonstrate the need for Pakistan by the will of the Muslims. Therefore, he asked him to organize tribal lashkars. This is in February 1947, to start attacking British and to create communal riots in the Northwest Frontier Province, so that the British would be forced to concede. But then the British had conceded Pakistan. So the lashkars were not used then, but they were used subsequently as raiders to attack Kashmir.
Can you give some context on the word Lashkars?
Lashkar is a group, an army, or it's a tribal conglomeration of tribal people. They constitute into a Lashkar. You can call them a militia, you can call them whatever, but the traditional word used is Lashkar.
Okay. They fight with guns?
Yeah. Guns, swords, whatever they have.
Okay. All right.
So, Pashtuns.
Gotcha.
So these Lashkars were then organized by Iskandar Mirza. They were not used to riot in NWFP, but they were subsequently used in October 47 to attack Kashmir. So Jinnah was, all his life he preached constitutionalism. He did not, in fact, even agree with Gandhiji's movement of non-cooperation, or civil disobedience. Yet when it came to the crunch, it was he who gave the orders for Direct Action Day, which led to the killings in Calcutta, as I mentioned, and wanted Iskandar Mirza to create riots in NWFP.
It was basically maybe in a way the immediate cause to create Pakistan finally.
Yeah.
But they probably sensed that, okay, the British are going to leave. Let's have this as the final straw in the possibility of Pakistan.
Yeah. So the 46 was not that the British were going to leave. When he ordered Direct Action Day in Calcutta, that is the time when the Cabinet Mission Plan had given a plan for a confederation of India and Pakistan. They were not going to concede Pakistan. So he wanted to demonstrate the need for Pakistan by creating these riots in Calcutta.
Okay.
That was one. Similarly, by February 47, again the British had not conceded Pakistan. So he told Iskandar Mirza, now you be ready to create this. So it was to force the British to concede Pakistan. That was the planning.
But were the British thinking of leaving the subcontinent already at this point?
Yeah. You see, again, it's a very interesting... till 1946, the Imperial General Staff, believed that a united India would suit British interests after they eventually withdrew from India.
Okay.
But by 47 they changed their point of view, because then they felt that by keeping Pakistan alone, that Pakistan was the more strategically important area of the subcontinent.
Why?
Because A, closer to the Soviet Union. At the time, end of World War II, the Soviet Union was pulling in a different direction. And by that time, it was realized, the wells of power, as it was called, the oil of the Middle East, they wanted somebody close enough over there. So the Suez Canal, the Middle East oil and all that. So they felt, and this is documented, that their interests of the British Empire would be served best by having a friendly Pakistan. With India, the problem was that they suspected Pandit Nehru of being too much of a socialist, and that he could have developed good relations or friendly relations with the Soviet Union. Whereas the case of Jinnah and the Muslim League, there was no question of ever becoming friendly with the Soviet Union. So they felt that their interests could be served best. So therefore, this is going to be a long answer.
No, go for
it. Kalat, for example, as Baluchistan was, Balka Baluchistan was called. Initially, Jinnah, Mountbatten and the Khan of Kalat agreed that Kalat would be an independent country in 1947.
Damn. Okay.
I just wrote an article, it was published in the Times of India. It's part of my book, on my third book. So they agreed on, and the Khan of Kalat declared independence. And there was an embassy of Kalat in Karachi. He set up a bicameral legislature, upper house and lower house. It was then that the British told him in October 47 that do not concede the independence of Kalat, make the Khan of Kalat sign the instrument of accession, because by that time they realized that they had to strengthen Pakistan. Because if Balochistan or Kalat was not part of, then they will not have a border with Iran. And they wanted, because of the oil wells and so then Jinnah started telling the Khan of Kalat, who incidentally was Jinnah was a lawyer of Khan of Kalat, who argued the case for Kalat's independence to the British, to the Cabinet Mission Plan. Kalat had funded Jinnah and funded the Muslim League. But Jinnah went against him and said, you better sign the instrument of accession. When he refused, the Pakistan army sort of picked him up, invaded Kalat, and March 47 picked him up, forcibly brought him to Karachi and made him sign the instrument of accession. So this is one.
What was their logic of wanting a separate country, Kalat?
Because it was an independent country in 1838, and this was reaffirmed by Pakistan in 1876 treaty that it will be. So Kalat, unlike the other princely states of India, was not regarded as, it was dealt with by the External Affairs Department of the British rather than the Internal Department. Like Nepal, like Bhutan, like Sikkim, Kalat was on that basis.
Damn.
It was an independent country, So when Khan said, look, I want to be, since British paramountcy, you're ending it, I want to be independent. And Jinnah said fine, the British said fine. And so they signed a standstill agreement in which, and they acceded to Kalat's independence, on the basis of which the Khan issued a proclamation.
So I gotta pause you, take you into 2023, and then we can return to that timeline.
Yeah.
In 2023, is the culture of this region that was formerly called Kalat, is it still very different from the rest of Pakistan?
Yes. You see, there are two people who inhabit the Baloch and the Brahvi. The Brahvi are very similar in language to the Tamils.
What?
There are so many common words between Tamil and Brahvi.
Okay.
So at migration took place or what took place, there is a lot of similarity.
Okay.
So the Baloch, in fact, the reason for this, how do you say it? Because in 1948, as soon as Kalat was forcibly annexed, the brother of the Khan, Abdul Karim, rose in rebellion. It was not a very successful rebellion, but it just showed that the Baloch did not accept merger with Pakistan. And there have been a succession of insurgencies, 1948, 1958, 1962, 1973, 77, and the current insurgency was started off in 2005 and is continuing for the last 18 years.
For the same reason?
Yeah, they did not accept the forcible accession with Pakistan. In fact, in the lower house, which was created by the Khan, There's a very famous speech of Ghosbaks Vijinjo. It's there on the net. Where he said that if we are forced, and if Pakistan forces to, merge us with Pakistan, then every Baloch son will rise in rebellion against Pakistan. And this is what is happening today.
And this is basically just culture speaking up, right? Like, hey, these people have a different culture than us. And I'm probably sure there's some historical rivalry also.
See, language, culture, ethnicity. The problem of Pakistan, again, we're moving into a different area, but let me just spend 2 minutes on this. You see, the reason why Pakistan has not been able to establish an overarching Pakistani identity is that the areas that became part of Pakistan had never before existed as a single country. In the east and the west, they never before existed as a single country. Even the more compact West Pakistan, they were historic states with their own ethnicity, their own culture, their own language. Never before existed together. In fact, Wali Khan, the Pashtun leader, when he was asked in the National Assembly, made this statement that I've been a Pashtun for 4,000 years, a Musliman for 1,300, and a Pakistani only for 40. So for him, his ethnic identity of being a Pashtun was far more important than religion or being a Pakistani. Similarly for the Sindhis, similarly for the Baloch. So this has been one of the major issues in Pakistan, that they have not been able to. What Jinnah and thereafter people tried to do was to superimpose a religious Islamic identity on these diverse ethnicities. Now, religion was strong enough, Islam was strong enough to create Pakistan by raising communal frenzy. But it was not glue to keep the various ethnicities together, only by the name of religion. In fact, Maulana Azad, in a very good, very famous interview that he had with a magazine called Chattan, and his differences with Jinnah was precisely this. He said the Muslim League is demanding Pakistan in the name of Islam. But nowhere in the Quran or in Islam does it say that people of one religion will form a nation. In fact, a Qaum is all the people living there. And the loyalty of people in India, the Muslims in India, are to their sect. Loyalty is to their sect, not to Islam per se. This is what happened now. The way Pakistan has developed, you have so much of sectarianism because people are more loyal, whether they're Barelvi, whether they are,
Hanfi.
Deobandis, Ahle Hadith. So there are loyalties to different sects.
Is the average Pakistani aware of this?
He knows it because on his daily life, he's taught that if you're a Deobandi, then the Barelvi is a kafir or Ahle Hadith. In fact, there's one of the best documents to command of Pakistan was the Munir Commission report, which was set up after the anti-Ahmadiyya riots in 1953 in Lahore. So this Chief Justice Munir and one Justice Kayani, they set up this report and it's called the Munir Commission report. So he asked the ulemas who wanted Ahmadis to be declared non-Muslim. He said, fine. If you want somebody to be declared a non-Muslim, you must first of all know who is a Muslim. Only then can you say this man is not a Muslim. And they're right. And this is documented. They say, much to our regret, they asked about 16 or 20 ulemas of different sects, who is a Muslim? And none of them could agree on the definition of a Muslim. Each one defined it as per his sect. And they write that if you accept the definition of A, then for those 15 other people, you go out of the pale of Islam. They will treat you as kafir. So there is no definition of being who is a Muslim. This is what Azad was telling Jinnah. Yet, by raising communal frenzy, the fear of the Hindu.
The fear of the Hindu.
Yeah, you'll be overwhelmed by Hindu.
Okay.
That's why they created the country, but then they couldn't keep it together in the name of Islam. Bangladesh broke away because for the Bengalis, language was far more important part of their identity than religion. But even till today. When they raised this Islam in danger in the frontier, for example, the Pashtuns laughed at them. They were 96% Muslims. They said, we are 96% and you think Islam is in danger because of 4% Hindus and Sikhs. So the Muslim League did very badly in the NWFA, which was the largest Muslim province in India in 37. But by 47 the situation had changed. And the very interesting thing of the Pashtuns and NWFP, which we can talk about whenever later on in the show.
Or now.
Or now, okay, fine. So, in the last elections, 46 elections, guess who won the elections in the province? It was the Congress Khudai Khidmatgar government. And it was the Chief Minister was Dr. Khan Saab, who was the brother of Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Now, this was a terrible thing for as far as the British were concerned. Because if Pakistan was to be viable, then this Muslim majority province had to be a part of Pakistan, not be beholden to the, as I said, Hindu Congress. So Lord Ismay, who was Mountbatten's chief of staff, called it a bastard situation, where the majority Muslims had voted for the Congress. So they said this verdict has to be upturned. And to do that, even though elections were held on 46, they said we have to have a referendum whether the assembly, whether the people want Pakistan or India. Even because they were afraid. You see, this resolution of partition was given to each provincial assembly to whether they wanted to accede to India, whether they wanted to accede to Pakistan. They feared that if this resolution was given to the NWFP assembly, they would vote for India because it was a Congress Khudai Khidmatgar majority. They said, no, we must have a referendum. For reasons that I am not fully aware of, the Congress agreed to this. The Congress leadership in Delhi agreed to this. So the Congress in NWFP had opposed it, but the Congress agreed to it. And this is when Abdul Ghaffar Khan told Gandhiji, you have thrown us to the wolves.
Can we dive a little bit deeper into why the Congress in Delhi was for it? Could there have been geopolitical reasons or pressure from the British saying, hey, you better agree to this? Because these
I think it, I'm not, I mean, I am not in a position to tell you why, but I think by that time the Congress party wanted the British to leave. And Mountbatten put his foot down that, look, if you don't accept this referendum, the whole partition plan is off, I am leaving. So I think they were sort of blackmailed into accepting. There was also a question of distance, you know, Pakistan in between NWFP and all that. But if there could be East and West Pakistan,
East and West India could have been a thing.
It could have been a different. Well, it's a historical fact of, you know, but this is Abdul Ghaffar Khan was so upset. He told Gandhiji, you've thrown us to the wolves. You know, भेड़ियों के आगे हमें फेंक दिया.
Was that an accurate statement based on how the future panned out?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the way the Muslim League was, you see, the Muslim League, Jinnah's thing was there are only two nationalities, Hindus and Muslims. There are two successors to the British, the Congress and the Muslim League. If they accepted Pashtun as a nationality, then his whole scheme would be rendered infructuous. So therefore, he dismissed Khan Saab's government within a week of Pakistan's coming when Pakistan was created. And even though the Khan brothers swore allegiance to Pakistan, Abdul Ghaffar Khan spent more years in jail in Pakistan than he did while he was under the British.
Really?
Yeah. They couldn't accept the Pashtuns. And because he demanded that, he said, we've just had an election in 46 on the basis of India and Pakistan. If you want to have a referendum, we're not scared of a referendum. But then it must be on the issue of Pashtunistan. To give us the option of Pashtunistan. Pashtun territory where the Pashtuns, unified Pashtuns all over British India, are able to have their own self-governance. Mountbatten rejected that. It can only be in India and Pakistan. So then they boycotted the referendum. Once they boycotted the referendum, naturally the majority of the people, it was a limited franchise. It was not that everybody voted. It was a very limited franchise. And 90% of that, I don't know, forget the percentage, of those people then voted for Pakistan, and it was a foregone conclusion.
भाई हम हर बार जब इतिहास की खासतौर पर इंडिया पाकिस्तान के रिलेशन से रिलेटेड या इंडिया पाकिस्तान की हिस्ट्री से रिलेटेड वीडियोस देखते हैं ना, तो हर बार जो ना एक बार हम सर ज़रूर खुद जाते हैं कि भाई आप जब भी देखते हैं ना वीडियो, कोई ना कोई नई चीज़ आपके सामने आ रही थी और इस तरह की चीज़ें आ रही होती हैं कि लिटरली एक बार आप जो है ना सोचने में मजबूर हो जाते हैं कि भाई जो एक आम पब्लिक है, ये जो वहाँ पे रहने वाले उस एरिया के आम लोग हैं, उनका इंटरेस्ट कहाँ गया.
मुझे सबसे तो अफसोस आज के टाइम पे पाकिस्तानियों पर होता है कि हम लोगों को कुछ भी पता नहीं है हिस्ट्री से रिलेटेड, और हमें जो डिक्टेट कर दिया गया हमें सिर्फ उतना ही लिमिटेड पता है. और अभी भी आप ये देखो कि जो उस टाइम की लीडरशिप ने जो एक बेस बनाई थी हिंदू मुस्लिम का प्रोपोगेंडा करके, और एक आप कह लो कि एक मुसलमान के दिल में एक नफरत पैदा करके, आपको अभी भी वो चीज़ नज़र आती है। बट मुझे ये चीज़ भी बहुत ज़्यादा दुखी करती है पाकिस्तान के बारे में कि लाइक अभी जैसे हम लोग बलूचिस्तान के बारे में बात करें तो हमें इतना क्या, मैं अपनी सिर्फ बात करूंगी, मुझे वीडियोस बनाने से पहले हिस्ट्री के बारे में नहीं पता था। मतलब ये यूट्यूब जर्नी से पहले की बात कर रही हूँ कि बलूचिस्तान जो है वो किस तरीके से पाकिस्तान के साथ मर्ज हुआ, फोर्सफुली मर्ज किया गया, फिर वहाँ पर क्या हालात हैं। आप जहाँ पर रहते हो आपको सिर्फ उस एरिया में ही इंटरेस्ट रहता है, बाकी आपको डिफरेंट एथनिसिटी में इतना इंटरेस्ट नहीं रहता। मैं ये एक लोकल पाकिस्तानी की बात कर रही हूँ, उनका जो माइंडसेट है, और ना ही उनको उनके बारे में इतना ज़्यादा मतलब अवेयर किया जाता है कि, और क्योंकि मेन स्ट्रीम मीडिया पर या किसी भी मीडियम में आपको उनके बारे में इतना ज़्यादा नहीं पता था। मैंने एक चीज़ देखी है कि अगर आपने किसी भी कौम को गुलाम बनाना है, जो कि हम लोग पहले भी थे और उसके बाद मुझे लगता है कि आज़ादी के बाद फिर से हम लोग गुलाम बन गए, तो आपको ना उसको पढ़ाई लिखाई से दूर कर दो, उसको इंटेलेक्चुअल लोगों से दूर कर दो, उसको अपनी हिस्ट्री के बारे में मत बताओ, जो आप सोच रहे हो उसी तरीके से डिक्टेट करो, आप गुलाम के गुलाम ही पैदा करते जाओगे। और अभी भी मुझे ये लगता है कि यही एक ट्रेंड जो है आपको पाकिस्तान में देखने को मिलता है।
यार मैं अगर खान ऑफ कल्लात की बात करूँ तो मैंने सुना हुआ था, लेकिन अगर बलोचिस्तान की हिस्ट्री की बात करूँ तो उसका मुझे जो है बिल्कुल जो है वो आइडिया नहीं था। मुझे यही था स्टार्टिंग में, क्योंकि बचपन से जो पढ़ते आए कि भाई पाकिस्तान का जो बना, ये 4 सूबे जो है वो पाकिस्तान में है, और जो है ढाका जो है वो पाकिस्तान का हिस्सा बना, बस इतना जो है जो एक था, ठीक है ना। लेकिन खान ऑफ कल्लात की अगर बात करें तो थोड़ा बहुत जो है ना मैंने उनके बारे में सुना हुआ है। लेकिन हाँ, जब आप क्या नाम लेते हैं एक ही चीज़ होती है ना जो ओवरफ्लो लोगों पर कर देते हैं, तो भाई फिर उसके जो है ना नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट्स जो हैं वो आपको जो है वो दिखाई देते हैं। खासतौर पर अगर यहाँ पे बात करें तो हम अगर अपने बचपन में देखें, हमें ये लिटरली ये ही नहीं था पता होता कि भाई हमारे घर से हमारे गांव के अलावा भी कोई दुनिया है, ठीक है ना। हमें नहीं था मालूम कि भाई अलग स्टेट क्या होती है, अलग प्रोविंस क्या होती है दूसरे मुल्कों में। ये मैं एक रियलिटी बता रहा हूँ कि हमें कल्चर के बारे में इतना हमारी बुक्स में नहीं पढ़ाया जाता, और इवन के अभी बात करें तो उस तरह नहीं है जिस तरह होना चाहिए। जैसे अगर हम पंजाब में भी अगर बात करें तो आप जैसे पिंडी वाली साइड पर जाते हैं आपको कल्चर चेंज देखने को मिलेगा, आप रहीम यार खान वाली साइड पर जाते हैं आपको जो है कल्चर जो है वो चेंज देखने को मिलेगा, आप मुल्तान डीजी खान वाली साइड पर जाते हैं आपको हर जगह कल्चर जो है डिफरेंट देखने को मिलेगा। तो ये चीज़ें जो है ना हमने ना कभी फील की, ना हमें कभी पढ़ाई की। ऑन द अदर साइड यहाँ पे क्या हुआ कि भाई टाइम के साथ साथ जो कल्चर था वो बजाय इसके कि उसे आप बूस्ट करते, उसे खत्म करते गए। ये मैं खाली जो है ना सिंध बलोचिस्तान या केपी के नहीं, इवन के पंजाब में हर जगह आपको ये चीज़ जो है वो देखने को मिली। लेकिन हाँ, दूसरे सूबों में मुझे अभी भी एक चीज़ अच्छी लगती है कि वहाँ पे फिर भी अभी भी आपकी कल्चरल इवेंट्स जो है ना लोग मनाते हुए उसे प्राउड फील करते हैं। सिंध में जैसे अजरक डे आता है या सिंध डे आता है, बहुत प्राउड से फील करते हैं। बलोचिस्तान में अगर बात करें आप उनका कल्चरल डांस देखें, केपीके में उनका कल्चरल डांस आपको जो है नजर आता है, और इवन कि आपको देखें आपको बहुत ज़्यादा प्राउड फील होता है। लेकिन लिटरली जो है ना मैं उन चीज़ों को जो है ना मिस करता हूँ अपने लोगों में, कि हम लोगों में ना वो एक चीज़ नहीं है। वो ये पार्टीशन के बाद जितने भी इवेंट हुए बहुत सारी चीज़ों को जो है ना ख़त्म कर दिया गया लोगों के अंदर से।
मुझे सबसे ज़्यादा आयरनी ये लगती है कि भाई हमें अपनी ही कंट्री में डिफरेंट एथनिसिटीज़ के बारे में नहीं पता। इनफैक्ट जब हम लोग डिफरेंट जगहों पर जाते हैं, मतलब अगर हम अपनी पंजाब से निकलकर मुख्तलिफ शहरों में जाएंगे तो हम लोग जब वहाँ का कल्चर देखेंगे हम लोग बड़े हैरान होते हैं, और हम लोग देखते हैं वाओ ये तो हमारे लिए नया है। जबकि मुझे लगता है कि ये चीज़ नहीं होना चाहिए, और इसका बहुत ज़्यादा जो चीज़ें हैं वो डिपेंड करती हैं प्री पार्टीशन पर भी, कि हमें अपनी हिस्ट्री के बारे में नहीं पता, हमें लीडर्स के बारे में नहीं पता कि उन्होंने क्या डिमांड्स रखी थी, किस बेस पर जो नया कंट्री है वो बनाया गया। जब इंडिपेंडेंस मूवमेंट जो है वो उसमें सब लोग जो है वो मिलकर एक साथ चल सकते थे, तो फिर बाद में इन चीज़ों की क्यों ज़रूरत पड़ी। सो मुझे अभी भी मतलब मैं ये जो सोच मतलब मेरे जहन में है वो यही है कि आपका एक ग्रीड था। सो मुझे लगता है कि वो जो ग्रीड है वो इस तरह को आ गया कि आपने बहुत सारे लोगों की जिंदगियां जो है ना उस पर दाव पर लगा दी। क्योंकि जैसे ये पॉडकास्ट स्टार्ट हुआ उन्होंने जिस तरह से बोला कि नॉर्थ साइड पर जो मुस्लिम्स थे उनको थोड़ा सा ये फील होना शुरू हो गया था कि भाई कि उनकी उनकी जो पावर है उसमें कमी
वो भी एलीट को,
एग्जैक्टली
सिर्फ एलीट
अभी
को।
भी तुम देखो ना, अभी भी तो पाकिस्तान की जो एलीट है मुल्क को चलाने में उसका इम्पोर्टेंट रोल है कि वो ही लीड कर रही है। जो एक मास लेवल पर आपको लोग हैं वो नहीं नजर आते।
ये हकीकत है कि
हाँ।
जो आपको पाकिस्तान का जो एक मिडिल क्लास, अपर मिडिल क्लास या लोअर क्लास जो तबका है, वो आपको पार्लियामेंट्स में या आपको बहुत बड़ी बड़ी पोस्ट पर जो है वो नजर नहीं आएगा। आपको मुल्क की जो है वो एलीट ही नजर आती है।
सॉरी मैं तुम्हें यहाँ पर इंटरप्ट कर रही हूँ, लेकिन मैं एलीट की बात ये यहाँ पर बोलना चाहूंगी कि उनके स्टैंडर्ड भी डबल हैं। मेरा कहने का मकसद ये है कि शुरू से जो एक बेस रखी गई और जो मतलब जिस सोच पर वो आप चीज़ों को आगे लेकर चले गए, अभी तक हम लोगों को वही चीज़ें नज़र आती हैं कि जब तुम एलीट को देखते हो तो उनके अपने लिए रूल्स कुछ और होते हैं और लोगों के लिए कुछ और होते हैं। तो वो जो होता है ना डबल फेस हो जाना आपका, वो आपको नज़र आता है कि जैसे आपको अगर कोई कैसे बोलते हैं पॉलिटिकल बेनिफिट्स चाहिए तो उसके लिए आपका अटायर भी डिफरेंट हो जाएगा, आपकी बातें भी डिफरेंट हो जाएंगी। लेकिन अगर आप अपनी पर्सनल लाइफ में देखोगे तो बिल्कुल उसके ऑपोजिट होगी, उसमें आपको कोई रिलीजन का रोल नजर नहीं आएगा। तो कहने का मकसद ये है कि जिस तरह की आप बेस रखते हो उसी तरीके की चीजें आगे फॉरवर्ड होती जाती हैं और उसी लेगेसी को मुझे लगता है कि आज भी कायम जो है वो किया गया है, जो कि हमारे लिए मुझे लगता है कि अगर देखा जाए ना तो आज के टाइम में एक बहुत ही अनफॉर्चुनेट चीज हो चुकी हुई है।
मेरा यहाँ पे ना एक चीज ये मानना है कि चले अगर पार्टीशन हो गया उसके बाद जो भी सिनेरियोस क्रिएट हुए, लेकिन एक अच्छे तरीके से कंट्री को रन किया जाता है, एक जो है लोगों की जिंदगी में बजाय इसकी जो भी आपको बदहाली देखने को मिलती है, खुशहाली देखने को मिलती ना, तो आज जो है ना जो इतने डिफरेंसेस आपको देखने को मिलते हैं या इतने ज्यादा इश्यूज देखने को मिलते हैं, नो डाउट इश्यूज फिर भी रहते हैं, लेकिन बहुत हद तक वो खुद ब खुद ही रिजॉल्व हो जाने थे।
बिल्कुल, क्योंकि जब आप लोगों को एक प्रॉस्पेरिटी की तरफ लेकर आते हो तो लोग जो है वहां पर आपको मतलब कम आवाजें वहां पर आपकी उठती हैं।
बिल्कुल।
बट अगेन वही बात है, वैसे मैं सोच रही हूँ कि अगर हम लोग जैसे खान अब्दुल गफ्फार साहब की अगर हम लोग बात करें तो मैं कहूँगी कि लाइक वाकई में कुछ लोग इतने वाइज होते हैं कि उनकी सोच वो इतने फोरसाइटेड होते हैं कि वो आने वाले टाइम को पहले ही भांप जाते हैं कि क्या हो सकता है। तो मैं ये जरूर बात कहूंगी कि बाकी में कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं जो कि शायद आप उनकी आवाज जो है वो दबा देते हो या जो कुछ भी कर लें या उनको शायद उस सिचुएशन से ही हटा दें, बट उनके अल्फाज जो है ना वो कभी भी मुझे लगता है कि गायब नहीं होते, ना ही खत्म होते, बल्कि वो जनरेशन टू जनरेशन कहीं ना कहीं किसी ना किसी सोर्स से आपको पता चलती रहती है। बाकी का जो पॉडकास्ट है वो अब हम आपके साथ कल देखेंगे। बहुत मजा आया, बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग मैं कहूँगी ये पॉडकास्ट था एंड इनफैक्ट मुझे लगता है कि पाकिस्तानियों को ये पॉडकास्ट देखने चाहिए क्योंकि आपको हिस्ट्री के बारे में पता होना चाहिए जो हमें यहाँ पर नहीं बताई जाती। तो लेकिन
अब आकर लोगों के थोड़े से दिमाग जो है ना वो चेंज हो रहे हैं।
सोशल मीडिया
बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है।
अदरवाइज मुझे लगता है अगर आज यूट्यूब ना होता, डिफरेंट प्लेटफॉर्म्स ना होते तो मे बी आज भी हम उसी सोच के साथ रह रहे होते।
बिल्कुल ऐसा ही है।
तो मुझे लगता है कि इसका एक बहुत बड़ा रोल है। बाकी आप जरूर बताइए कमेंट सेक्शन में आपको कैसा लगा आज का पॉडकास्ट और इसी के साथ मुझे
लाइक, सब्सक्राइब, शेयर, गुड बाय।